Hey everybody, it's your old pal Mike. I hope you're happy, healthy, and safe. And welcome back to the channel. Sorry you can't see me. I'm using the Twoodfrd method of video production this week just to get this thing done quickly. Because, well, I'm very excited about this guitar, but it also needs to go back to its owner. So we're just gonna get moving along with it if it's okay with you. Now the reason we're here today is because of this very cool guitar that I have on the bench. This is a 1977 Fender Bronco. It's been refinished in Lake Placid blue, and it is one of my favorite offset guitar models. Now this one's in my hands for some general setup stuff, as well as a complete rewire of the controls down here. We've got volume, tone, and an output jack, and these kick-ass little knobs that I had tucked away as the originals were gone, as well as a few other odds and ends. Now, if you've never encountered a Fender Bronco before, this is one of my favorite models ever because it is essentially identical to the Music Master of the same era, with the same bigger pickguard shape. We've got the same offset body, the same 24-inch scale length, but we've got a bridge pickup instead of a pickup at the neck, and this makes it so ideal for me as a bridge pickup lover myself. But the other thing that sets the Bronco apart from the Music Master is this wonderful vibrato. Now, I've gotten so many questions over the years about how this thing works and can I please make a video, and so if that's you, well, you're going to find satisfaction in this one. We're gonna dive deep into what makes this vibrato so cool, explain some parts and some setup techniques, and that way everybody can refer back to this for maintenance purposes down the road. But I just wanna say, oh, I love it. Listen to this. It works beautifully. So let's talk about the vibrato. Now, from the outside, the Bronco Vibrato may seem a little strange, a little confusing, and that's okay, but it's actually a very simple machine. Let's talk about the components. These 6 individual string saddles are attached to the string anchor plate. Notice the comb back here where the ball ends attach. And this entire plate pivots on these 2 posts located on the bass and treble sides of the bridge. This is not unlike the way that the cigar of a Mustang vibrato operates, as well as a 2-point Strat trem. The 6 individual saddles are held in place by a Phillips head screw located directly beneath the string. By loosening this, that allows for intonation adjustment, moving forward if the string is too flat and backward if it's too sharp, just like any other bridge. This is perhaps not my favorite method of intonation adjustment. I think I would still greatly prefer a spring and screw kind of mechanism like you see on a Strat vibrato or a Mastery bridge or what have you. But this is not unprecedented. This is actually identical to the way that you set intonation on a Floyd Rose vibrato. So, you know, it's not too far out of the norm. Now let's move back to the pivot plate / string anchor. I've already mentioned the comb where the strings attach here via the ball ends. You'll also notice the housing for the arm. Now this arm isn't original, it's a threaded Jazzmaster style arm, but it more or less fits. I may go ahead and remove a little extra material because it is rather tall and you have to reach up for it while you're playing. Not entirely ideal, but you know, we'll see what the owner wants. I also want to point out that there should be a grub screw back here allowing you to tighten the arm down, and I found a screw to replace it, but the original is missing, so this will have to do for now until I find the correct part. There's one more thing that I need to point out about the string anchor / pivot plate, and that is this screw right here. Now it's kind of worn down, but this is a Phillips head screw, and that is here to allow for adjustment of spring tension. This thing goes all the way down into the body through the body mounting plate and meets with a spring on a spindle just like you would see on a Jazzmaster or Jaguar vibrato. Now this guitar is currently strung with 10 to 46 strings, and it works beautifully. That spring tension is really light. It does require a little bit of force, but it's not tight by any means. Now, if you prefer to use a heavier string set, say 11 to 50 like I use on Jazzmasters, or 12 to 54, which is what I prefer for short scales, then you are going to have to crank this down quite a bit more, which should result in a similar feel, a nice light tension vibrato. That's okay. It shouldn't alter the feel of the vibrato at all, but just so you're aware, you're going to have to increase the spring tension to counteract the pull of heavier string gauges. Now underneath the pivot plate is the body mounting plate, and this is what covers the route for the vibrato assembly, but also provides a shelf for the spring to push up against as you actuate the vibrato. That's how the spring is creating the tension to pull everything back into tune. Let me take all of this off and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, and we lift off. There you can see the bottom of the string anchor plate, pivot plate. These are the 6 holes for the Phillips head screws to poke through, and this is the bottom of the arm housing here. And lastly, we've got 6 screws. There should be a 7th, there's not, but we're gonna take these 6 screws out and show you what's underneath. All right, let's gently lift off the body mounting plate to expose the route. This route is a little bit wider than a P90, but shaped similarly, and that's what it's hiding. It's hiding the spring, the valve spring. Now this spring and spindle assembly is a lot like what you're gonna see on a Jazzmaster or a Jaguar. Sure, you've got the valve spring here, but you've got this spindle into which the tension adjustment screw is going to thread, and the spring sits on top of it and presses up against the body plate as you actuate the vibrato. It's actually quite clever. Now this spring is a lot larger and a lot tougher than what you're gonna find on a Jazzmaster's spring. I actually happen to have the American Pro spring out still, and you can see that it's shorter, but it's a lot wider. And yeah, a lot stiffer. I can move the American Pro spring a lot better than I can move this thing. Okay, now I've got the Bronco Vibrato assembled outside of the body with the American Pro spring because I want to show you that this design is not all that much different from what goes on a Jazzmaster or a Jaguar. I've got my prototype mastery here just to show you how similar these designs really are. It really does feel like this is a Jazzmaster or a Jaguar vibrato that's been flipped upside down, and let me show you what I mean. So I've got the Pro spring on here now because I cannot actuate this outside of the body. It's far too tight without string tension. Now what's going on when you press down the arm of a Bronco vibrato is that the pivot plate, the string anchor plate, is moving up, and the spring underneath is compressing against the body plate. The Bronco Vibrato is really in the same spirit of design as the Jazzmaster or Jaguar Vibrato, except that it's upside down. The body plate is underneath rather than on top, hiding the internals. The part that pivots is hidden under the mounting plate of the Jazzmaster and Jaguar Vibrato, but it really does work under the same principles. Now that I've shown you all of the internals, I'm going to put this back together, string it back up, get the spring tension worked out, and then we're going to have a listen to how this guitar sounds. Now we're going to put the spring back in its little hole, just like that. We're going to remount the body plate. And next we'll pop the anchors back into place. We won't tighten them all the way down just in case we need the pivot plate to move around a bit. And finally, since we've got the spring and its spindle down in the route, we're going to try and line this up. Yep, that's in there. And now all we need to do is crank it down. The spacer has these little teeth on it. Ooh, out of alignment again. That keeps it from rotating while under tension. And that seems to be fine. We're going to tighten it down just a little bit more and call that good. And finally, we're just going to use these to set our action. Oh, it's a nice one. Ooh. Okay, so what just happened is something I absolutely wanted to address. I'm so glad it happened on camera. If you've got an old Bronco like this, you may indeed have an issue where the pivot plate slips off of its post. The reason for that is that the pivot plate is very old and has been used quite a lot, and as such, this contact point, this knife edge, is completely worn out. So I'm gonna have to pull this off again and reshape that so that it fits snugly in the little channel here on the post. Let me see if I can get a better view of that. You see that right here, that little knife edge? That's where the plate should be sitting, but it tends to slip because it's worn down and not sharp enough. So I'm gonna have to reshape that off camera to get it working properly. But as long as I don't press down too hard, it shouldn't be a problem. That seems to be the trigger for this event. I'm also not sure if these marks are coming out on camera, but can you see these? These little grooves worn right beside the plate here. The reason for that is actually someone using a screwdriver to pop it back up. People have been doing that to this particular guitar for decades, and so I don't feel bad about adding to that, but yeah, that seems to be a problem with these. So, as I said, if you have an old Fender Bronco and it's doing this, that is the reason. The fix is to pull the plate off, reshape it so that the knife edge locks in positively, and then you should be good to go. This is a thing that can happen with older 2-point trem systems as the metal wears down. Not uncommon, not a design flaw, just something you need to be aware of for maintenance purposes. All right, I've got this thing tuned up and ready to go, but before I plug it in, I just want to do one more. It's a fantastic vibrato. I don't know why more people don't use these. Broncos are fantastic guitars. They work beautifully when they're set up correctly, just like any other offset guitar. They have a feel and a sound all their own. And this pickup's actually Curtis Novak, but on every Bronco I have ever played, the bridge pickup is snarly and loud and punishing, and that goes double for this incredible Curtis Novak. So yeah, I'm really excited to get this thing plugged in, so why don't we do that? But before we go and play and get rock and roll about it, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for 20K. I cannot believe that so many of you like to spend time with me on a bi-monthly basis. Will be generous, but I can't believe it, and I'm so grateful. Thank you for welcoming me on this platform, for taking this journey with me, for learning about offset guitars with me, because they are my favorite instruments ever created. I think they're all brilliant and beautiful and comfortable, and yeah, my life would be so much different had I not encountered offset guitars. I want to thank you for liking, for sharing, commenting, subscribing, doing all of that good stuff you know the algo loves. May it be ever in our favor. And I also want to give a shout out to my supporters on Patreon, especially Hendo, whose guitar this is. Hendo sent this to me for the maintenance, for the work, and it definitely needed some things taken care of. But you know, we've been talking about loving this vibrato and just not being able to find resources about it, so here we are. We're making one together. So Hendo, thank you. Bottom of my heart, thank you for trusting me with your guitar and for your patience during an extraordinarily busy time of my life. So thank you for that. So without further ado, let's plug in, let's have some fun, and I will say goodbye to you now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you're taking care of yourselves and each other, and I hope that you're having fun with guitars. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.